guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Littlesius. Today guys, we're going to take one final look at the final version of the Chieftain, Detonate Dead, Fulcrum, AFK, Simulacrum and Ultimatum specialist. We can use it for tier 17s, but mostly it's going to be used to farm inside Ultimatum and Simulacrum. At the end of this video, we will have some community highlighted drops that we saw on Discord pass by, where people got amazing results from both the cheap strategy of Ultimatum, where we use all the scarabs except the scarab of catalyzing, the expansive one, and obviously from the expansive setup as well, where we use all the scarabs including the catalyzing scarab. There will be a link to a atlas planner under this video where people can check the tree that I'm using. There's a lot of points left to go for in there. Choose whatever you want. If you want to add some expedition, that's fine. Add some blight, that's fine. There is room to do that. Without further ado, let's dive right into the build and let's see what we're working with. I'm not going to go too long into why we go for Fulcrum. The previous video that we've uploaded explains very well how that works and how we carry around the Ignite and proliferate it to our environment, which is what you see in the video on why Trialmaster, Omniphobia and Coasters are dying as fast as they do. It's because we're carrying the hinekora's explosion from the ascendancy right on us, and it's a lot of extra damage that we're proliferating right to the environment. And we scale Ignite duration through here, and through here to make that last as long as possible. Now the final version of this build, I told you guys, was going to be a Mageblood version. We farmed up this Mageblood purely through Ultimatum farming. At the end of the first week we had it, and we had our complete setup done. Now let's take a look at why we want Mageblood. First things first, drought. Everybody knows drought is an extremely annoying mechanic where your flasks don't activate. Without the Mageblood, we would be using Flasks, where you gain 3 Flask charges when you're hit by an enemy. A sort of mini Mageblood effect, especially when you're inside the Ultimatum and continuously being hit. But once you get that drought on your inscribed Ultimatum, all of a sudden all your Flasks are for naught. They don't work, or they do, but you don't get any charges to activate them a second or third time. So Mageblood really is that icing on the cake that we want for this build. Now when we have Mageblood, a couple of things change. First and foremost, we can go for a flask like this, where we have 95% increase effect of our +5 max fire resistance, enabling us to scale back on the max fire resistance jewels and just go for double overtime multiplier with fire damage and life. These can be expensive, but they will crank up your damage something fierce, right guys? Very much so. Another thing that is different about this build is we now went for a ring like this, where we have a little less recoup, a lot of life, but chaos resistance is pretty much fixed. It also fixes strength, if that's even an issue, because we might need to go for quite a few tattoos of the Nagamahu, something like that, Warmonger, for the chances to ignite, right? So a lot of those tattoos will be used to get to 100%. Right now we're a little above that because we weren't using this. But fair warning guys, you don't need to go above 100%. I've gotten this question a couple of times. Why are you at 130? You don't need to be, guys. 100 is just fine. You do want to get to 100 because I believe it's going to help you a lot with carrying around that Ignite. You want to make sure that when the hinekora's fury happens, it actually inflicts an Ignite, putting you in a position where you become a living nuke of damage, which is ideal, right? A couple of other things that we've changed. We went for a helmet like this, where we have burning damage, concentrated effect, and more elemental damage on there. Now ideally, the things that I would like to see here is exactly what you see right there, except fire resistance I want to turn into supported by increased area of effect. That would be the dream. It would require us to have a Shaper Elder hybrid base, and either recombinate, I'm not sure if that's possible, but that's probably what I would attempt if it is, or Horrorcraft, Essences of Horrorcraft it until you have it, which will be an expensive joke indeed, but that's something I would go for. Now if you can also get the +2 socketed AoE with 10% increased area of effect, more power to you, but let's not get ahead of ourselves, that would be metal tier crafting, right? Now a couple of other things. One of the things that is really important when you look at this build is mitigation, right? Because we are standing right in the middle of an ultimatum all the time. We are getting hit, but we're also taking damage over time, and it is that over time that we want to mitigate as much as possible. When you use Righteous Fire, you start to burn for a certain amount of damage per second, right? You also have a lot of overtime effects inside the Ultimatum. How we mitigate that is through sheer recovery through regen. There are such things as reduced recovery. Reduced recovery 1 we cannot regen. Reduced recovery 2 is extremely dangerous to run. Fair warning on that one. Now how we achieve all that regen is through these nodes. Regenerate 4% of life per second while on low life. Regenerate 0.6 per second. 0.6 per second. 0.6 per second. 0.6 per second. 1.8 and 15% increased life regeneration rate. And, of course, a fracture on our boots. Now we want to get ideally a fracture on the gloves as well. I didn't get around to that, but that would give us even more regen. But realistically, we have more than enough regen, especially because we have Purifying Flame linked to Cast Wind Stunt, creating Consecrated Ground right under us. So effectively in the game we will be, when we're fighting, about 4k regen per sec, which is nearly 100% of our pool, as you can probably see inside the PoB, keeping us safe from overtime effects. Another added bonus obviously is when we get 3% of our life regenerated per second on the Flask at 95% increase effect, and we mitigate a little bit extra of that chaos with a corruption like this. Not mandatory, but all these little bonus things will make the difference between you just completely ignoring Miasma 4 with Blood Altar, or having to be careful in a situation like that. Now another question that people are asking me is the rings, right? Why am I not using the hateful accuser ring, especially inside Simulacrum? It's because we don't need it, right? We scale our ignite duration, we carry the ignite on the Fulcrum, and very rarely do we even need Vaal Breach. If we do need Vaal Breach, that's all we need. You can just go for a very giga chat ring like this, which is going to provide you all the life and chaos resistance that's going to help you way more than a gimmick ring that we don't need on this specific setup. Another question on the rings is, why don't you have cannot be inflicted with bleeding on your ring? Well, the answer is simple. Bleeding and corrupted blood are two different things. If you have cannot be poisoned on a flask, you can go cannot be inflicted with bleeding on a ring, but you're still susceptible to corrupted blood. Now we fix that through our flasks, which means your immunity to bleeding and corrupted blood is both secured, and you can get immunity to poison on your ring, securing everything without needing a node on your tree for corrupted blood. Saving nodes, especially at level 100, definitely worth going for. The other flask that we have here, and it's the only ailment we're gonna care about, is immunity to freeze and chill. Now why do we care about immunity to freeze and chill? Because we can survive pretty much everything. We wanna run things like Ruin 1, 2, 3 and even 4 if you're practiced enough. But we don't want to get frozen. Because if you have these cold orbs on the floor and they freeze you and you got a Ruin 4 on your tail that teleports in front of you, you might get 4 or 5 stacks on your head before you ever get to move. So I would highly recommend, guys, that you do get freeze and chill immunity as your only immunity. Another question I'm getting is, why don't we go for shock immunity with a Storm Shroud? If we would do that, we would not be carrying around an ignite anymore, right? If we become ailment immune, Fulcrum is dead. So that wouldn't work. So the other flask here is a basalt flask with the regen. The reason we go for the combination between granite and basalt flask is simple. We are lacking a hell of a lot of physical damage taken as modifiers that have been removed from the game from the Taste of Hate, the Helmet and the Watcher's Eye. So we can only start mitigating physical damage now through sheer armor, and this helps a lot with that. And the other one obviously is a movement speed flask, Quicksilver, with a little extra armor on there as well, because we're stacking armor as much as we can, and that plus the other flasks ensure your safety. You can also see that we're at 90 all resistances the way we are right now, which is nice and safe. We have about 15k armor. It's not ideal, we would like to have it a little bit better, but keep in mind we still have 40% of physical damage taken as fire damage, and in 100 or 150 maps I haven't died once in either the ultimatum itself or the inscribed ultimatums. It's really, really rare. Taking a look at the tree, a lot of this is based on Emiracles setup that he made before this league even started, and that he made some updates on. Thanks to Emiracle we are using the clusters that we are using, combination of AoE, life, and obviously the chance to cover enemies in ash or hit while you are burning. Now we are always burning, right? And people were asking, why are you using the things in the chest that you are using? Well, the amount of hits that we are doing pretty much trigger our Wrapped in Flame continuously, right? We have so many hits happening on screen that we can make use of this. But to be fair, all of our damage, 99%, comes from carrying around our ignites on Fulcrum. So I would dare say that you can pretty much put whatever you want in this chest, put an additional support in there for damage, or an additional skin to your liking. Pretty much all your damage comes from killing the first enemies with your righteous fire, exploding them with your hinekora's ascendancy, and then carrying around that damage with Fulcrum. So it's pretty much whatever in here. So this is a combination of scaling ignite duration, scaling area of effect, especially when we're using conk effect on the helmet and our righteous fire effect is slightly less than I would like it to be, scaling resistances, scaling armor, and using that Mageblood as that cherry on top for all those pretty flasks to always be up and ignore drought and all that kind of stuff. So another question I'm getting about this setup is, what's the bare bones minimum for me to get going? How much currency do I need? Now, I'm very hesitant to speak about currency because prices of items fluctuate a lot on the market throughout the league. So I'm just going to tell you the items and specific stats that I would think you need to get this going and the level at which you can comfortably start playing this. So your priorities were going to be the Blood Notch, 55 and above. The Immutable Force, if you can get it 961 and above, that's fine. That's going to help you get to 1 frame on your stun. A Immortal Flesh Leather Belt, which is going to be a couple of Chaos high regen. A Rise of the Phoenix Shield, which is going to be at most a couple of Chaos with high regen. A basic Scepter or Sword or whatever it is for some damage over time multiplier. A pair of Boots with high life, Chaos Res, Armor, Fire Res, and preferably a little movement speed. A pair of gloves with high life, Chaos Res, Fire Res, preferably armor base. A 4-link will just work fine. And for your helmet, you can just smack an Essence of Horror on there until you either get burning damage or conk effect to begin with. You don't have to push it that far. I do think you need a Valerium, but it doesn't have to be corrupted. It's this little ring, right? It doesn't have to be corrupted. Now the prices of that will vary a little bit, depending on whether you craft it and how far you want to push it. Your next upgrade would be the combo between Defiance of Destiny and the Fulcrum for obvious reasons. Once you go Fulcrum, you lose your shield, you lose a little bit of that armor, of that regen, of that safety, and Defiance of Destiny will make up for that and then some. So this is a 2-punch deal like we said before. After that, guys, there is a million little tweaks that you can do to this build, but I would highly recommend you start looking to get your ignite chance to around 100%. The Tatoos are expensive, I know, but just rerouting your tree and taking these nodes here and maybe even foregoing some of the life nodes for this node right here, which gives a little bit chance to free shock and ignite, and the ignite nodes that are here might get you very close to well above 60%, where you don't need as many Tatoos right off the bat. So there are definitely ways to get your ignite chance high enough where you don't need a million Tatoos at 1 divine each. And after that, guys, I would say do your ultimatums and just save up for Mageblood, because the quality of life on that is amazing. Now at the end of this video, you guys are going to see some highlights, and how many people we've seen getting Magebloods is amazing, right? I'm going to put like 8 of the biggest drops that I've seen, but pretty much everyone that has been playing this on our Discord and that has been doing Ultimatum now has a Mageblood through doing this. So it's very attainable if you stick with it, even on the cheap strategy. Speaking of the strategies, we will have a planner to the Atlas tree in the video description for you guys to check out. Let's take a quick look at what I have right here. It is not a completed tree. I haven't even completed my atlas, but a few things of note have changed since the last video. I have talked a bit about I felt that all these things were balanced. I don't think that's the case anymore. Unique items at this point have started dropping to the point where a Reslata, which was 10 divine, is now 50 chaos. A couple of other items, such as Aziri's Foible, now a couple of chaos, right? So the prices have gone down significantly, and I would say to prioritize your worthy of the future and your worthy of the present, and make sure that you have worthy of the past in the past. Meaning, don't allocate it. Now, the reason we now start using these little nodes is because we have a cheap strategy where we only use double bribing, single inscription and single dueling, because we can kill the boss really quickly, and we forego on the scarab of catalyzing. That's really expensive, and the rewards are still very satisfying and like lottery ticket type stuff to get. Which is why we try to use these to get more inscribed ultimatums that will then stack nicely with all the catalysts also becoming inscribed ultimatums through the Scarab of Inscription. Be surprised how many times you're gonna see things like a Doctor or a Sephiroth or a Multiple Divine or even some really good double corrupted uniques as a normal reward, and it's gonna make your day because that is special and unexpected. So this is pretty much the cheap setup that we do. Before we end this video, guys, we're going to take a look at some of the highlights that the community has posted on our Discord. I want to thank the community for their engagement, their thinking about strategies and about this build. You guys are awesome. If you have any questions about this build, leave a comment under the YouTube video, find me in game in Discord, or find me on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Lethalesius, the same name as the YouTube channel. For now, guys, I want to thank you all for watching, and if you're going to be running some Ultimatum, you're going to have some fun, guys. See you on the next one, okay, guys?